As Aaron Templar, a royal guard at Windsor Castle, made his evening rounds like any other day, something caught his eye. A small, huddled shape against the ancient stone walls. At first it seemed like just another homeless person seeking shelter, but as he drew closer and saw it was a young black girl sleeping alone in the growing darkness, something about her vulnerable presence made his heart stop. What Aaron uncovered would shatter his world and make him question everything about the royal institution he had served so faithfully. The dark secrets behind this little girl will send shivers down your spine. Comment where you're watching from, and if you like this video, don't forget to subscribe. The sun was setting over the ancient stone walls of the royal castle, casting long shadows across the meticulously maintained grounds. Sergeant Aaron Templar, a royal guard, began his usual evening patrol, his polished boots echoing against the cobblestones as he made his way along the secluded sections of the castle perimeter. The air was crisp, carrying the faint scent of autumn leaves and distant wood smoke. Aaron's mind wandered as he walked, his body moving almost on autopilot through the familiar route. He'd been a member of the Royal Guard for 5 years now, and the strict protocols were ingrained in his very being. Every step, every turn, every moment of his patrol was precisely timed and mapped out. Any deviation from the assigned route could result in severe disciplinary action. The royal family's security was not a matter to be taken lightly. As he rounded a corner near the back gate, something caught Aaron's eye. A small dark shape huddled against the cold stone wall. At first he thought it might be a discarded blanket or perhaps a stray animal seeking shelter. But as he drew closer, his heart began to race. It was a child, a young girl, no more than 12 years old, curled up on a thin, tattered blanket. Aaron's steps faltered as he approached. The girl was sleeping, her small body tightly coiled against the chill of the evening air. Her clothes were worn and dirty, her hair a tangled mess. She looked painfully thin and vulnerable in the fading light, her presence both concerning and utterly out of place within the formal castle grounds. For a moment, Aaron's training warred with his conscience. The guard protocol was explicit. Any unknown presence must be reported immediately, with no direct interaction permitted. But every instinct in his body screamed at him to help this child, to wake her gently and find out why she was here, alone and unprotected. With great effort, Aaron forced himself to continue his patrol. His steps were heavier now, weighed down by the gnawing concern for the sleeping girl. As he completed his round and approached the back gate once more, he found himself holding his breath, hoping against hope that the child would be gone, that perhaps it had all been a trick of the fading light. Yet there she was, still curled up in the same position when he made his second round, her small chest rising and falling with each shallow breath. He glanced around, but the area was deserted. Squatting beside her, he gently touched her shoulder, trying to wake her, but she didn't stir. The sight of her, vulnerable and unprotected, stirred a deep conflict within Aaron. He knew his duty: continue his patrol, report the situation to his superiors, and let them handle it. But the thought of leaving this child alone in the encroaching darkness felt like a betrayal of everything he stood for. Fearing someone might pass by and see him squatting next to the girl, Aaron reluctantly stood up. With a heavy heart he resumed his patrol, though his mind raced with questions. Who was this girl? Where had she come from? And, most pressing of all, what would happen to her once he reported her presence? The castle's strict security protocols left little room for compassion, and Aaron worried what fate might await this vulnerable child once the full weight of royal bureaucracy bore down upon her. As the last traces of daylight faded from the sky, Aaron made his way towards the administrative wing. He knew he had to report what he'd seen, but the weight of responsibility sat heavily on his shoulders. The administrative wing of the castle was a stark contrast to the ancient stone walls of the exterior. Here, fluorescent lights cast a harsh glow over modern office furniture and state-of-the-art security systems. Aaron's footsteps echoed in the empty corridor as he made his way towards Major Pembroke's office, each step feeling heavier than the last. Major Pembroke had a reputation for being a stickler for protocol, a man who lived and breathed by the rulebook. Aaron had always admired the Major's dedication, but now, with the image of that sleeping child fresh in his mind, he found himself dreading the conversation to come. Pausing outside the heavy wooden door of Major Pembroke's office, Aaron took a deep breath to steady himself. He knocked firmly, waiting for the gruff enter before pushing the door open. Inside, Major Pembroke sat behind his meticulously organized desk, papers arranged in precise stacks, not a single item out of place. The fluorescent lights cast harsh shadows across his stern features, deepening the lines of his face and giving him an almost menacing appearance. "Report, Sergeant Templar," Major Pembroke said, his voice clipped and businesslike. Aaron stood at attention, his back ramrod straight as he began to speak. "Sir, during my evening patrol, I observed an unauthorized individual on the castle grounds. A child, sir, a young girl, sleeping near the back gate." Major Pembroke's eyebrows rose slightly, the only indication of his surprise. "And your actions upon this discovery?" "I maintained protocol, sir," Aaron replied, careful to keep his voice steady. "I did not engage directly with the individual. I completed my assigned patrol route and came directly here to report the situation." Major Pembroke's fingers steepled in front of him as he considered Aaron's words. "You're certain you didn't engage with her directly?" he asked, his tone sharp. "Yes, sir," Aaron confirmed, fighting to keep the guilt from his voice. "I adhered strictly to protocol." Major Pembroke nodded, his expression unreadable. "Very well. You understand, of course, that any unknown individual, especially a child, must be treated as a potential security risk until properly investigated." "Of course, sir," Aaron replied, though internally he bristled at the idea of treating a vulnerable child as a threat. Major Pembroke reached for his intercom, pressing a button with deliberate slowness. "Send in a member of the administrative security team," he ordered. Within moments, a plain-clothed administrator arrived, tablet in hand. Major Pembroke turned to the new arrival. "We have a report of an unauthorized minor on the castle grounds. I want you to check recent missing persons reports, focusing particularly on children matching the description provided by Sergeant Templar." The administrator nodded, fingers flying over the tablet's screen as he began his search. Major Pembroke turned back to Aaron. "You will file a written statement detailing your observations. Beyond that, you are to continue your regular patrols without further involvement in this matter. Is that understood?" "Yes, sir," Aaron replied, his heart sinking at the clinical detachment with which the situation was being handled. "Dismissed," Major Pembroke said, already turning his attention to the administrator's findings. Aaron left the office, his mind whirling. He had done his duty, followed protocol to the letter. So why did he feel as though he had failed so miserably? Hours passed, and as Aaron stood in his post, he found himself unable to shake the image of the sleeping girl from his mind. As his break time approached, he made a decision that he knew could potentially jeopardize his position. Instead of heading to the guard canteen, he made his way back to the area where he had first spotted the child. As he approached, his heart began to race. The girl was still there, but she was no longer alone. A security guard, not one of the royal guards, but a member of the General Castle security team dressed in black uniform, was attempting to remove her from the premises. The scene before him was tense, the girl actively resisting the guard's efforts. "Dad inside!" the girl shouted, her voice high and panicked. "My dad guard like him!" To Aaron's shock, she pointed directly at him as she spoke. The security guard noticed Aaron's presence and turned, his expression hardening. "This isn't your concern," he said firmly. "I've got this situation under control." Aaron hesitated, torn between his duty to stay out of the situation and his growing concern for the child's welfare. "I'm on my break. What's going to happen to her?" he asked, trying to keep his voice neutral. The security guard's grip on the girl's arm tightened slightly. "We'll take her to the police station, try to locate her parents. Standard procedure for situations like this." At the mention of the police station, something in the girl's demeanor changed. With a sudden burst of strength, she wrenched her arm free from the guard's grasp and took off running. Aaron watched in amazement as she disappeared into the shadows, her movements betraying a surprising familiarity with the castle grounds. The security guard cursed under his breath, reaching for his radio to call for backup. Aaron stood rooted to the spot, his mind reeling from what he had just witnessed. The girl's claim about her father being a guard, her apparent knowledge of the castle layout, none of it made sense, and yet he couldn't shake the feeling that there was more to this situation than met the eye. As the security guard barked orders into his radio, Aaron slowly backed away from the scene. He knew he should report what he had seen, but something held him back. The girl's desperate plea and her swift escape had stirred something in him, a desire to understand, to uncover the truth behind her presence here. Aaron made his way to the guard's dining area to spend the rest of his dinner break, his mind churning with questions. He maintained his outward appearance of stoic professionalism, but internally, his mind was in turmoil. Who was this girl? Could her claim about her father be true? And if so, what did that mean for her presence here on the castle grounds? The image of the girl's frightened face as she fled from the security guard haunted him. When he reached the guard's canteen in a wing of the palace, the smell of cooked food filled the air, and he suddenly realized just how hungry he was. The canteen was bustling with activity, the air filled with the clatter of cutlery and the low hum of conversation. And for a moment the familiar routine helped settle his troubled mind. Aaron moved through the serving line mechanically, selecting his meal with little thought: a meat stew, some fries, a small salad, and a glass of orange juice. He found an empty table and sat down, his movements betraying his preoccupation. He had barely taken a bite of his warm stew when a familiar voice broke through his thoughts. "Hey, comrade, what's up? You look like you've seen a ghost." Looking up, Aaron saw his comrade, Marcus, sliding into the seat across from him, a look of concern on his face. Marcus was a few years older than Aaron, with a quick wit and a knack for reading people. "Just tired," Aaron mumbled, not meeting Marcus's eyes. Marcus snorted. "Right, and I'm the Queen's secret lover. Come on, mate, what's eating you?" Aaron hesitated, unsure how much to reveal. "Have you noticed more homeless people around the palace lately?" he asked, trying to keep his tone casual. Marcus shrugged. "A bit, yeah, economy's rough all over. Can't blame them for wanting to sleep near the palace rather than under some bridge, I suppose." He chuckled, but his laughter died away when he saw that Aaron wasn't joining in. A moment of awkward silence stretched between them before Marcus leaned in, his voice lowering. "Aaron, seriously, what's going on? You're not yourself." Aaron took a deep breath, weighing his next words carefully. "Marcus, do you know of any guards here who have black daughters?" Marcus's eyebrows shot up in surprise. "Black daughters? Not off the top of my head, no. Why do you ask?" Aaron shook his head, realizing he might have already said too much. "Just curious, I guess." Marcus studied him for a moment, his expression thoughtful. "You know," he said slowly, "if you're looking for that kind of information, Haston might be your best bet. That old bartender knows more about the history and personnel of this place than anyone. Some say he's a living encyclopedia of the Royal Guard. If anyone ever writes a book about us, they'd better interview him first." Aaron nodded, a small spark of hope igniting in his chest. Haston was indeed known for his encyclopedic knowledge of palace gossip and history. If anyone could shed light on the girl's claims, it would be him. "Thanks, Marcus," Aaron said, managing a small smile. "I might just do that." Marcus clapped him on the shoulder as he stood to leave. "Whatever's going on, Aaron, be careful. You're a good guy, but this place, it doesn't always reward good guys, you know?" "Thanks, mate," Aaron said, and Marcus patted him on his shoulder. "I need to return to my post. I'll see you around." As Marcus walked away, Aaron felt a chill run down his spine. His friend's words of caution only served to underscore the dangerous waters he was wading into. But as he glanced at the clock and saw that he still had nearly an hour left in his break, he knew what he had to do next. Gathering his courage, Aaron stood and made his way towards the bar section of the canteen, where Haston could always be found, polishing glasses and dispensing both drinks and wisdom in equal measure. The bar area was quieter than the main canteen, with only a few off-duty guards nursing drinks at the far end. Haston stood behind the counter, his weathered hands moving with practiced ease as he arranged glasses and bottles. Aaron approached cautiously, sliding onto a bar stool and catching Haston's eye. "Evening, Haston. Could I get a pint, please?" Haston nodded, a knowing glint in his eye as he began to pour the beer. "Rough day, lad?" he asked, his voice gravelly with age and years of smoke. Aaron accepted the glass with a nod of thanks. "You could say that," he replied, taking a sip to steady his nerves. "Actually, Haston, I was hoping you might be able to help me with something." The old bartender leaned in slightly, his interest piqued. "Oh, and what might that be?" Aaron glanced around, ensuring no one was within earshot. "I was wondering, in all your years here, do you remember any blackguards who might have worked at the palace?" Haston's face grew serious, the lines around his eyes deepening as he listened. Without a word, he took a glass, carefully filling it with beer, his hands steady and precise. He slid the glass over to Aaron and let out a long breath, his gaze fixed on some distant point. When he finally spoke, his voice was barely above a whisper. "There was one," he said. "Richard Hayes, his name. One of the few blackguards in the Royal Service's history. Good man, Richard was. Dedicated, professional. But his story, it doesn't have a happy ending, I'm afraid." Aaron leaned in closer, his heart racing. What happened to him? Haston's eyes darted around the room before he continued, whispering, "It was during a protest against the royal family years back. Things got ugly. Richard was sent in. Officially, he was supposed to be a calming presence. Unofficially," Haston trailed off, shaking his head. "What?" Aaron pressed. "Officially, his death was ruled an accident, but there were rumors, whispers that he'd been sacrificed, a scapegoat to appease the protesters." Haston paused, his weathered face creasing with curiosity. "But tell me, lad, why are you asking about Richard? It's ancient history to most folks around here." Aaron hesitated, weighing his words carefully. Finally, he decided to trust the old bartender. I saw a little black girl near the back gate during my patrol. She claimed her father was a guard here. When the security guard approached her, she ran off. She seemed to know the grounds well." Haston's eyes widened slightly. "A little girl, you say? Black?" Aaron nodded. "Yes. I can't stop thinking about her. If she's Richard's daughter, then she and her mother have been left with nothing," Haston finished, his voice heavy with sadness. "Aye, that fits. Richard's widow, Naomi, she got a survivor's pension at first. But because of the nature of Richard's death, it was limited. Strict royal family policy, you understand. They only paid out for a year." Aaron's mind was reeling. "And the daughter, what happened to her?" "I wish I knew, lad, I wish I knew, but if she's showing up here, looking for her father, well, it doesn't paint a pretty picture, does it?" Haston continued. "I still remember the time Richard showing me a picture of his little girl when she was just a toddler. Proud as could be, he was." Aaron's mind was reeling. Could the girl he'd seen be Richard's daughter? It seemed impossible, and yet... Aaron shook his head, feeling a mix of sadness and determination. Is there any way to find out more about what really happened to Richard? The old bartender's expression grew wary. There might be records in Major Pembroke's office, but... He leaned in closer, his voice dropping to a near whisper. "Listen to me, lad. I've been here 40 years. I like my job and I'd like to keep it. Whatever you're getting yourself into, be careful. Some secrets are kept for a reason. And as for that little girl's connection to Richard Hayes, it's only speculation. Think long and hard before you risk your position over something as uncertain as a guess." Aaron nodded, understanding the implicit warning. "Thanks, Haston. I appreciate your help." As he finished his beer and prepared to return to his post, Aaron's mind was a whirlwind of information and possibilities. The story of Richard Hayes had opened up a whole new dimension to the mystery of the girl at the gate. But it had also hinted at darker secrets lurking beneath the polished surface of royal protocol and procedure. As Aaron resumed his post, the weight of Haston's revelations pressed heavily upon him. He knew he was treading on dangerous ground. The castle, once familiar and comforting, now seemed to hold shadows at every corner. He found himself scanning the area where he had first spotted the girl, half hoping and half dreading to see her again. The night wore on, the silence broken only by the occasional rustle of leaves and the chirp of crickets in the cool autumn breeze. Aaron's mind raced with possibilities, attempting to piece together the tragic story of Richard Hayes and the mysterious girl who claimed her father had been a guard. It was nearing midnight when a commotion at the gate drew Aaron's attention. A woman had appeared, her disheveled appearance and frantic movements immediately setting off alarm bells in Aaron's mind. As she drew closer, he could smell the sharp tang of alcohol on her breath. "My baby!" the woman cried, her words slurred but filled with desperation. "Have you seen my little girl? Please, she's all I have left." Aaron's heart began to race. Could this woman be Naomi Hayes, Richard's widow? The timing seemed too coincidental to ignore. He glanced around, ensuring no one else was within earshot. "Ma'am, psst," Aaron whispered, keeping his voice low and steady. "I'm afraid I can't leave my post, but if you'd like to speak with someone about a missing child—" He hesitated, wanting to say, "I can call for assistance," but in truth he was eager to hear her story himself. I can listen, but I can't talk," Aaron added, his voice barely above a whisper. He wanted to curse himself for sounding so timid, but it was the truth. The woman's eyes, bloodshot and wild, locked onto Aaron's face. "You don't understand," she pleaded. "She comes here looking for her father. Richard, he died, but my daughter. She thought they took her father from us, and now—" At the mention of Richard's name, Aaron felt a jolt of confirmation. This was indeed Naomi Hayes, and the girl he had seen was almost certainly her daughter. But protocol demanded that he maintain his silence, that he must not engage with civilians without proper authorization. Naomi's desperation grew as Aaron remained silent. "They used him," she spat, her grief turning to anger. "Sent him out there to die and then tossed us aside like we were nothing. And now my baby girl thinks if she comes here, she'll find him." Aaron's resolve wavered as he watched tears begin to stream down Naomi's face. The pain in her voice, the raw anguish of a woman who had lost everything, tore at his heart. Glancing around again to ensure no one else was around, Aaron made a decision that he knew could cost him his job, or worse. "Mrs. Hayes," he whispered, barely moving his lips, "I've seen her. Your daughter. She was here earlier today." Naomi's eyes widened in shock and hope. "You've seen her? Where? Is she okay?" "Psst!" Aaron hushed her. Then he felt guilty for acting so sheepish. "She was sleeping near the back gate over there," Aaron explained quickly, and pointed the area with his eyes, still maintaining his rigid posture. "Security tried to remove her, but she ran off. She said her father was a guard here." Fumbling in her pocket, Naomi produced a crumpled photograph. "This is her," she said, her voice trembling. "My Lily. Please, if you see her again—" Aaron's heart sank as he recognized the girl in the photo. It was indeed the child he had seen, though the picture showed a happier, healthier version of her. "I'll keep an eye out," he promised, knowing he was crossing a line but unable to ignore the plea of a desperate mother. As Naomi stumbled away, clutching the photo to her chest, Aaron felt the full weight of the situation descend upon him. He had broken protocol, shared information with a civilian, and involved himself in a matter that was far beyond his jurisdiction as a royal guard. From his post, Aaron watched as Naomi made her way to the area near the back gate where he had first seen Lily. She settled down against the wall, her eyes scanning the shadows, clearly intent on waiting for her daughter. As the night wore on, Naomi's posture slumped, her exhaustion evident even from a distance. Aaron's heart ached as he observed her vigil, knowing he could do nothing more without further compromising his position. All he could do now was wait and watch, hoping that Lily would return. The hours crept by with agonizing slowness. Aaron maintained his post with outward stoicism, but his every sense was on high alert. He found himself constantly scanning the shadows, hoping to catch a glimpse of Lily, while simultaneously watching over the now sleeping form of Naomi. It was well past midnight when Aaron's vigilance was rewarded. A small figure emerged from the darkness, moving with the cautious grace of someone well practiced in avoiding detection. Aaron's heart leapt as he recognized Lily, making her way back to her usual spot. As Lily approached, she suddenly froze, noticing the sleeping figure of her mother. For a moment the girl stood motionless, as if unsure whether to approach or flee. "Mommy!" Lily's voice was small, uncertain. Naomi stirred at the sound, her eyes fluttering open. For a moment she seemed disoriented, but as her gaze focused on Lily, a look of profound relief washed over her face. "Oh, baby!" Naomi cried, struggling to her feet and rushing forward to envelop her daughter in a fierce embrace. "I'm so sorry I scared you yesterday. I was high again and I couldn't help myself. I'm sorry for hitting you." "That's okay, Mommy. You look better now. I'm sorry for disappearing." Aaron watched the reunion with a mixture of agony, relief, and apprehension. The sight of mother and daughter clinging to each other, their joy palpable even from a distance, made his heart swell. But he knew that their presence here, especially given the revelations about Richard Hayes, put them in a precarious position. As the initial rush of emotion subsided, Aaron began to notice worrying signs. Naomi's behavior, initially warm and maternal, began to shift. Her movements grew erratic, and her words slurred as she alternated between showering Lily with affection and muttering darkly about the injustices they'd endured. Aaron remembered the faint whiff of alcohol on her breath when she talked to him earlier, and wondered if perhaps she'd been drinking before their reunion, which now caused her agitation. His relief turned to concern as he watched her behavior, realizing that Lily might not be as safe as he had hoped. Lily, for her part, seemed torn between relief at being reunited with her mother and growing distress at Naomi's deteriorating state. "Mommy, please," she whispered, trying to guide her mother to sit down. "You're scaring me again." Aaron felt his chest tighten as he watched the scene unfold. He knew he should call for assistance, report their presence, but something held him back. Haston's warnings about the true circumstances of Richard's death echoed in his mind, mingling with the raw suffering in this family's faces. He hesitated, knowing that if he reported the situation, security would likely just usher them away. Even if the police became involved, they might be taken to a shelter, but Aaron had seen people refuse that option, only to end up back on the streets. It wouldn't resolve the deeper troubles haunting this family. His indecision was cut short by a sudden, horrifying development. Naomi, in the grip of what Aaron now recognized as severe alcohol withdrawal, began to hit her head against the stone wall. The dull thud of flesh against unyielding stone was punctuated by Lily's terrified sobs. "Stop it, Mommy! Please stop!" the girl cried, trying in vain to pull her mother away from the wall. Blood began to trickle down Naomi's face, and Aaron felt something inside him snap. Protocol be damned. He couldn't stand by and watch this unfold. As he stepped away from his post, moving swiftly towards the distressed pair, a flood of memories washed over him. He saw himself, years younger, sitting in a dingy apartment with a knife in his hand, hurting himself, the weight of depression and hopelessness threatening to crush him. He remembered the moment he had decided to join the army instead, to seek purpose and structure as an antidote to his pain. Now, faced with Naomi's anguish and Lily's terror, Aaron felt a surge of empathy and determination. He had found his way out of that darkness. Perhaps he could help this family find theirs. Reaching the pair, Aaron gently but firmly pulled Naomi away from the wall. "Mrs. Hayes," he said softly, using his body to shield Lily from the sight of her mother's bloodied face, "you're safe now. Both of you are safe. But I need you to calm down and listen to me, okay?" Naomi's wild eyes focused on Aaron's face, recognition slowly dawning. You moved from your post? You're the guard who talked to me?" Aaron nodded, maintaining a calm demeanor despite the gravity of the situation. He looked around. No one was there in the dead of the night. That's right. And I want to help you both, but we need to move quickly and quietly. Can you do that? As Naomi nodded, the fight seeming to drain out of her, Aaron turned to Lily. The girl's face was streaked with tears, but there was a glimmer of hope in her eyes. "You're going to help us?" she asked, her voice small but steady. "I'm going to try," Aaron promised, his resolve strengthening. "But I need you to be brave and help your mum, okay? Can you do that for me?" Lily nodded solemnly, taking her mother's hand. Aaron's mind raced as he considered their options. He knew he was about to take actions that would likely end his career, possibly even lead to criminal charges. But looking at Lily's determined face and Naomi's broken spirit, he knew there was no other choice. With a deep breath, Aaron made his decision. He would help this family, consequences be damned. But to do so, he would need evidence, proof of the injustice that had been done to Richard Hayes and his family. And he knew exactly where to find it. "Listen, you're going to wait for me here," he whispered, leading them towards a secluded area of the castle grounds. "Stay quiet and pretend to be sleeping. Don't make any noise. I'm going to make this right, I promise, and I'll return here in an hour or two." With Naomi and Lily safely tucked away in a secluded corner of the castle grounds, Aaron slipped back into the shadows, moving away from them. His heart pounded, a turbulent mix of fear and determination fueling each step. He steeled himself, knowing he was about to cross a line from which there would be no return. There's no turning back now, he reminded himself, as he prepared for the most dangerous part of his plan. But in his heart, he knew it was the right thing to do, to seek justice for Lily, Naomi, and the memory of Richard Hayes. The administrative wing of the castle loomed before him, its windows dark save for the occasional security light. Aaron's mind raced as he approached Major Pembroke's office. He had memorized the guard rotations, knew exactly how long he had before the next patrol would pass through this area. Every step felt like a betrayal of his oath as a royal guard, and yet he couldn't shake the conviction that what he was doing was necessary, perhaps the most important act of his life. He had expected the office to be locked and had prepared to use the pin from his uniform to unlatch it. But to his surprise, the door to Major Pembroke's office was already unlocked. Aaron's heart raced as he realized what this meant. The Major was likely still somewhere in the palace, perhaps working late or dealing with an urgent matter. This unexpected detail added a new layer of urgency to his mission. Slipping inside, Aaron quickly ensured the expansive room was empty before moving with practiced stealth toward the filing cabinets. His hands trembled slightly as he located the section marked Classified, his mind racing with the implications of what he was about to uncover. It didn't take long to find Richard Hayes's folder. As Aaron began to scan the documents inside, his blood ran cold. The truth was far worse than he had imagined. The papers detailed a calculated plan. Richard hadn't just been sent into a volatile situation, he had been deliberately positioned as bait. Orders, signed by Major Pembroke himself, instructed backup teams to arrive late, effectively abandoning Richard to the angry crowd. Aaron's first instinct was to photograph the evidence, but as he flipped through page after damning page, he made a bold decision. He would take the entire folder. It was a riskier move. The theft would be immediately apparent, but it ensured that Naomi would have all the evidence she needed to seek justice. As he secured the folder inside his uniform, a sound from the hallway made Aaron freeze. Footsteps were approaching. His heart pounding, he quickly closed the drawer and looked for a place to hide. The door handle began to turn just as Aaron managed to conceal himself behind a large filing cabinet. For what felt like an eternity, Aaron held his breath, certain that at any moment he would be discovered. But after a tense pause, the footsteps retreated. Aaron waited until he was sure the coast was clear before making his escape, the stolen folder clutched tightly to his chest. Racing back to where he had left Naomi and Lily, Aaron found the pair huddled together, Naomi looking more lucid than before. The gravity of what he was about to do hit him full force as he approached them. "Mrs. Hayes," he said, his voice low and urgent, "I have something for you. It's evidence. Proof of what really happened to your husband." Naomi's eyes widened as Aaron handed her the folder. This is classified information," she whispered, her hands shaking as she accepted it. Aaron nodded grimly. "It is, and it's vital that you understand what to do with it. You need to take this to journalists, to activists, people who can make this public. But under no circumstances should you take it to the police. Do you understand?" Naomi nodded, clutching the folder to her chest. Aaron turned to Lily, kneeling down to meet her eyes. "Lily, I need you to be strong for your mom, okay? Help her make sure these papers get to the right people. It's very important." Lily's small face set in a determined expression. "I will," she promised. "For Daddy. Can you make sure he's not in danger inside the castle, sir?" Aaron exchanged a sad glance with Naomi. It was clear that Lily still had no idea what had happened to her father. Aaron knelt down to Lily's level, his expression soft but serious. "Lily," he began gently, "there's something I need to tell you about your father." Lily's face clouded with confusion, her small hands fidgeting. "What do you mean?" she asked, her voice barely a whisper. Aaron took a deep breath, glancing at Naomi, who nodded apologetically. "Your father, Richard, he was a royal guard. He was a brave man who served with honor, but he passed away a few years ago. He's not here anymore." Lily's eyes widened, filling with tears as the truth sank in. "But I thought he was alive. I thought I'd see him again." Her voice broke, and she looked to Naomi, betrayal and grief written across her face. Naomi's voice trembled as she whispered, "I'm so sorry, sweetheart. I wanted to tell you, but I didn't know how. I thought maybe it would be easier if you didn't know." Lily's tears spilled over, and Aaron placed a gentle hand on her shoulder. "I know it's hard, Lily. I know this isn't what you wanted to hear. But right now it's really important that we leave so no one sees us. We need to go quietly, or else our plan might fail." Lily sniffled, wiping her tears and nodding, though her heart was clearly broken. Aaron gave her a reassuring smile, whispering, "Your father would want you to be safe. Let's do this for him, okay?" Lily took a shaky breath, then nodded. "Okay," she whispered, her voice filled with resolve. With one last comforting squeeze of her shoulder, Aaron led them forward, knowing they had to move swiftly. As Aaron watched mother and daughter disappear into the night, the weight of what he had done settled over him. He had crossed a line, violated his oath, and put his entire future at risk. But looking at the retreating figures of Naomi and Lily, he felt a sense of peace. Whatever consequences he might face, he knew in his heart that he had done the right thing. Returning to his post, Aaron steeled himself for what the coming dawn might bring. He had set in motion events that could shake the very foundations of the royal household. All he could do now was wait and hope that the truth would finally come to light. The first rays of sunlight began to edge over the horizon as Aaron's shift finally ended. Drained from the night's events and the burden of his choices, he wandered to a quiet corner of the castle grounds to rest and sit down, taking in the morning breeze. He knew he should go home, try to get some rest before inevitably facing the fallout of his actions, yet something held him in place. He couldn't shake the gnawing worry. Had Naomi managed to get the folder to the right person? What if it had somehow ended up in the wrong hands? As the morning progressed, Aaron became aware of an unusual commotion beyond the castle walls. Initially, he assumed it was just an unusually large group of tourists gathering for photographs. But as the volume increased and the tone became more insistent, he realized that something more significant was unfolding. The typical sounds of early morning tourists were replaced by something more urgent, more chaotic. He could hear raised voices, chants, and what sounded like a growing crowd. Aaron made his way to the guard canteen, his heart pounding with a mixture of anticipation and dread. As he entered, he was immediately struck by the tense atmosphere. Guards huddled in small groups, speaking in hushed tones, their faces etched with concern. He approached the food stand, helping himself to a small sandwich and a glass of water to relieve himself from thirst. Spotting Marcus at a table, Aaron approached cautiously. "What's going on?" he asked, setting down his tray, trying to keep his voice neutral. Marcus looked up, his expression a mix of excitement and worry. You haven't heard? It's chaos out there. Someone leaked classified documents about some cover-up from years ago. There are protesters gathering outside the main gates, demanding answers. Aaron's breath caught in his throat. It had happened even faster than he'd anticipated. What kind of cover-up? He asked, fighting to keep his voice steady. Something about a guard who died during a protest years back, Marcus replied. Apparently it wasn't an accident like they claimed. The papers are saying he was deliberately sent into danger, abandoned by his backup. As Marcus continued to fill him in on the details, Aaron's gaze drifted to where Haston stood behind the bar. The old bartender's face was grim, his eyes meeting Aaron's for a brief, loaded moment before quickly looking away. They're saying Major Pembroke was involved, Marcus murmured, his voice barely above a whisper. I saw him earlier. He looked shattered, like his whole world was falling apart. Aaron nodded quietly, his thoughts spinning. He'd anticipated consequences, but the rapid unraveling of events was staggering. As he finished his meal, he suddenly became acutely aware of his surroundings, noticing how the other guards reacted to him. Some, like Marcus, seemed unaware of his involvement, but others, especially the senior guards, were shooting him wary, suspicious glances. Haston, for his part, seemed determined to avoid any interaction. When Aaron approached the bar to return his tray, the old bartender pointedly turned away, busying himself with polishing already spotless glasses. The tension in the room was palpable, and Aaron knew it was only a matter of time before the full weight of his actions came crashing down upon him. Sure enough, as he approached his assigned position, Aaron saw a sight that made his blood run cold. Major Pembroke was waiting for him, flanked by several senior guards. The Major's face was a mask of fury and betrayal, his eyes boring into Aaron with an intensity that made him want to shrink away. Guard Aaron, Major Pembroke's voice was cold and precise. You will accompany us immediately. Your actions have been discovered, and the consequences will be severe. Aaron felt a chill run down his spine, but he stood tall, meeting the Major's gaze unflinchingly. He had known this moment would come, and he was prepared to face it with dignity. As they walked towards the administrative wing, Aaron could feel the eyes of his fellow guards upon him. Some looked confused, others disappointed, and a few, to his surprise, seemed to regard him with a mix of respect and sympathy. Once inside Major Pembroke's office, the full weight of the situation became clear. Security footage played on a monitor, showing Aaron's midnight visit to the office and his theft of the classified folder. I trusted you, Sergeant, Major Pembroke said, his voice a mix of anger and disappointment. Do you have any idea of the damage you've caused? Aaron stood at attention, his voice steady as he replied, I did what I believed was right, sir. The truth needed to come out. Major Pembroke's face contorted with fury. The truth? You had no right to make that decision. You've violated your oath, compromised national security, and thrown this entire institution into chaos. With all due respect, sir, Aaron said, his resolve strengthening. The real violation occurred years ago when Richard Hayes was sacrificed and his family abandoned. That was the betrayal of everything this institution is supposed to stand for. For a moment, Major Pembroke looked taken aback by Aaron's boldness. Then his expression hardened. Your service is terminated, effective immediately. Hand over your uniform and credentials now. Let me make it clear. There's no chance of pardon for your actions, and the palace reserves the right to strip you of any honors and pension. With a strange mix of loss and liberation, Aaron began removing his guard attire. As he handed over his uniform, bearskin cap, bayonet badge, and ID, it felt as though he was shedding a layer of complicity that no longer fit him. You do realize, Major Pembroke said, his voice low and dangerous, that this isn't the end. There will be legal consequences for your actions. You've thrown away your career and possibly your freedom for what? A family you barely knew? Aaron met the Major's gaze steadily. For justice, sir, and for the integrity of an institution that I believe should stand for something more than just blind loyalty. As he turned to leave the office, now dressed in civilian clothes, Aaron felt a complex mix of emotions washing over him. There was fear, certainly, for the uncertain future that lay ahead, but there was also a profound sense of relief and rightness. Walking out of the palace grounds, Aaron took a deep breath of the crisp autumn air. The sounds of the protest beyond the gates were louder now, a reminder of the changes his actions had set in motion. He was still trying to process the whirlwind of events that had just unfolded when he spotted a familiar sight that made him pause. Sitting on a bench just outside the palace grounds were Naomi and Lily, accompanied by a woman he didn't recognize. Approaching cautiously, Aaron noticed that Naomi looked markedly different from the desperate, disheveled woman he had encountered the night before. Her eyes were clear, her posture straighter, as though a great weight had been lifted from her shoulders. "Aaron," Lily called out, her face lighting up as she saw him. "You're not wearing your uniform." Naomi stood, her expression a mix of gratitude and concern. "What happened? Are you all right?" Aaron managed a small smile. "I've been dismissed from service," he explained simply, "but I'm okay. More importantly, how are you both doing?" The unknown woman stepped forward, extending her hand. "I'm Louina Morrow, an activist with the Citizens for Transparency group. We've been working on cases like Richard's for years, but we never had the concrete evidence we needed until now." Aaron shook her hand, feeling a surge of hope. "So the documents are already making a difference?" Louina nodded enthusiastically. "More than you can imagine. The royal family has been forced to address the issue publicly. There's talk of a full investigation into past incidents and a complete overhaul of security protocols." Naomi reached out, grasping Aaron's hand. "We can never thank you enough for what you've done. You've given us a chance at justice, at closure." Aaron felt a lump form in his throat. "I'm just glad I could help. Richard deserved better, and so did you both." Louina cleared her throat, her expression turning serious. "Aaron, I hope you understand the magnitude of what you've done. Whistleblowing at this level, it's not without risks, but it's also incredibly brave and important. We'd like to help you fight for reinstatement if that's what you want. There are legal protections for whistleblowers that we could potentially leverage." Aaron considered her words carefully. The offer was tempting, a chance to regain the career he had worked so hard for. But as he looked at Naomi and Lily, at the hope shining in their eyes, he knew his path forward lay elsewhere. "I appreciate the offer," he said slowly, "but for now I don't think I can go back. Not after everything I've learned. The institution I thought I was serving, it's not what I believed it to be. I need to find a new way to make a difference." However, a flicker of concern crossed Aaron's face as he continued. "That being said, I might need your help if I have to face the police or potential jail time. I knew the risks when I took those documents, but the reality of it is starting to sink in." Louina nodded understandingly. "Of course, Aaron. We'll stand by you every step of the way. Our legal team has experience in these matters, and we'll do everything we can to protect you. You've done a brave thing, and we won't let you face the consequences alone. I'm confident the public will support you in this, and we can leverage that to our advantage." Aaron felt a wave of relief wash over him. While he was prepared to face the repercussions of his actions, knowing he had support eased some of the anxiety that had been building since his dismissal. "Thank you," he said sincerely. "I may take you up on that offer sooner rather than later." Naomi nodded understanding, then hesitated before speaking. "Aaron, we're going to be receiving compensation for everything that happened with Richard. We'd like to share it with you to help you get back on your feet." Aaron shook his head firmly. "No, absolutely not. That money is for you and Lily. You've been through so much already. Use it to build the life Richard would have wanted for you both." Lily tugged at her mother's sleeve. "Mom, can we help Mr. Aaron find a new job? Maybe he could work with Ms. Morrow and help other people like us." Louina's eyes lit up at the suggestion. "That's not a bad idea, actually. Aaron, we're always looking for people with insider knowledge of these institutions. Your experience could be invaluable in helping us identify and address other cases of injustice." Aaron felt a spark of excitement at the idea. It was a way to continue serving, to protect people, but in a manner more aligned with his personal ethics. "I'd be honored to help in any way I can," he said. As they continued to talk, discussing possibilities for the future and the ongoing impact of the leaked documents, Aaron felt a sense of purpose settling over him. He had lost his position in the Royal Guard, but he had gained something far more valuable: the opportunity to effect real change, to stand up for those who had been wronged by the very institutions meant to protect them. The sun was at its peak when they finally said their goodbyes. Naomi turned to Aaron and Louina, her eyes filled with a mixture of gratitude and determination. "We're heading back to the shelter for now," Naomi said, her voice steady. "It's not much, but it's a safe place while we figure out our next steps." Lily nodded, her small hand clasped tightly in her mother's. "Will we see you again, Mr. Aaron?" Aaron knelt down to Lily's level, offering a gentle smile. "I hope so, Lily. You both stay safe, okay?" As Naomi and Lily walked away, their figures receding against the familiar palace walls Aaron had once guarded, a complex wave of emotions washed over him. Beside him, Louina stood quietly, watching the pair disappear into the afternoon light. "They've got a long road ahead," Louina murmured, "but thanks to you they've got a fighting chance now." Aaron nodded, his throat tight with emotion. "I just hope it's enough." As he turned away from the palace, now dressed in civilian clothes that felt both foreign and freeing, Aaron took a deep breath. His future was uncertain, and there's possibly legal repercussions, but for the first time in years, he felt truly aligned with his values. He had chosen truth over blind loyalty, justice over protocol. And though the path ahead might be challenging, he knew in his heart that he had made the right choice. With one last glance at the palace behind him, Aaron stepped forward into his new life, ready to continue his fight for justice. Not from behind the walls of an ancient institution, but from alongside those who had been wronged by it. The chapter of his life as a royal guard had ended, but a new, perhaps even more meaningful one, was just beginning.